Let's stay with this theme as South Africa heads to the Russia-Africa summit tonight, while also preparing to host the BRICS summit to be held on home soil next month. Business leadership South Africa says our relationship must not come at the expense of relations with the West. BLSA says Russia represents, and I quote, quite unique risks looking at its war with Ukraine. Busi Mavuso is the Business Leadership South Africa's CEO and joins us live now. Thank you so much for your time this evening. You say that those who are representing us in these particular, summits don't seem to be able to draw distinct lines between relations with BRICS nations and trade relations with the West. How so?
Look, I think it's very clear for us. The BRICS bloc is a positive opportunity for South Africa, and it is right for our government to cultivate the relationships with BRICS. India and China in particular are huge and fast-growing markets that South African businesses can benefit from. The opportunities that the East presents, for South Africa are very crucial. But let's be clear and acknowledge the importance of our relations with everyone else in the world, including the West, which are very essential to our economic well-being. We need to be careful as a country that our relationship with BRICS should not mean staining relations with everyone else. So I think we actually make these comments as business in light or against the backdrop of the comments that were actually made by the Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities last week, which were rather unfortunate. Comments which suggests, as the minister said, that we are using BRICS as a country as a means to accelerate the downfall of an unjust imperialist world order. Now, that is a very dangerous statement to make. South Africa should actually be careful, in terms of making such statements and make sure that we don't alienate anyone in the process. Our relationship with the East and our relationship with Russia, China, India should not mean that it should actually come at a cost of a relationship with the West, which is obviously, the USA, the UK, and whatever the cases. I think, interestingly enough, ironically, in that same speech, the minister lamented those who prefer us shipping raw materials rather than manufactured goods to the world, but she failed to acknowledge that our relations with India and China are tremendously characterized by South Africa exporting raw materials and importing manufactured goods. She ignored that it is Europe and the US that import by far the majority of our manufactured goods, including vehicles and machinery that are actually manufactured locally. For example, 71% of our vehicle exports this year have gone to Europe and 15% have gone to the US. More than a third of our exports go to America and Europe, and around 37%, if I'm not mistaken, of our imports come from there. So let's realize, as we do what we do and as we make these iterations as a country, that a loss of the trade relations with the West are going to be very devastating for employment. It's going to leave our economy far more reliant on raw material export, which is precisely what we're trying to change. And I think we're just taken aback and we're worried about such utterances, by the minister. It actually is also quite contradictory because we have just come from Congress, in the US to try and salvage their AGOA relationship. Remember, the risk of South Africa losing AGOA is very real at the moment. So what is the point then of putting together a delegation to try and save AGOA, while on the other hand, you're making such statements? Because remember, our AGOA eligibility is still under review. So whatever we do at the moment could actually sway that either way. And we actually need to be careful as a country in terms of how we tread with all our relations, by the way, not just with the West.
And I suppose then listening to you, some of the approach that, may be taken to, exploit some of these opportunities may not be the correct one. But I wonder, what do you make of this? Because we've just listened to a report now by, one of our correspondents and saying that there's now accusations by the Kremlin that the West, and in particular the United States, is trying to sabotage the Russia-Africa summit that will take place in St. Petersburg this week by pressuring African countries not to take part. Of course, this is what the Kremlin is saying. If this is true, though, it could amount to bullying.
It could, and I think it's about time that South Africa and Africa as a continent does what is best for us and our people, as a continent. We know, the importance and the value that each of the trade relationships we have with the world mean to us. So I absolutely agree that we should not be dictated by anyone. We should not be dictated by Russia. We should not be dictated by China. We should not be dictated to by BRICS, and we should not be dictated to by the West, definitely. So we therefore are going to have to make decisions that are actually important for us and that will actually benefit us, as a country and definitely as a continent, but harming relations with the West by declaring that BRICS exists to somehow counter the West, would do us no good at all. And it is simply an irresponsible statement for the minister to actually have made. And I really think that we're going to have to do what's right for us under the circumstances. No pressure should come from anyone as we head towards the BRICS summit. We are actually relieved from where we stand as business that the Russian president is no longer going to come to South Africa. I really think that was actually going to present quite unique risks, given the war that Russia has declared on Ukraine. And it was actually going to put us in a very difficult position, and Vladimir Putin, having attended the summit in person, his presence would have completely dominated the agenda and limited the chance of positive outcomes from this BRICS summit. So I think it's definitely a great outcome. But what we do from here on and how we handle the summit, is purely dependent on the attendance of the attendees of the summit. And I think the individual countries, we should look at how we can make the regional bloc benefit us. There are talks at the moment of expanding the bloc. Let's look at what that looks like and what it is, as the South Africa and the broader African continent can benefit from that. So whatever agenda we go into the summit with should not actually be influenced in any way, by Russia, the East or the West.
And given, some of the conversations that would have taken place even around the Black Sea grain deal and, some of the requests by even our very own president in that particular regard. But now the decision by Russia not to extend this particular deal, and we're seeing some, of course, disturbing reports of what is now happening in the silos there. I wonder what impact do you think this is likely to also have when it comes to business in South Africa?
Yeah, obviously it is probably going to have some impact, but I guess let's look at other, alternatives, let's explore all our options, but I think this is precisely the point we're making, that it then becomes difficult, for you to actually cast your net wide and see what other options you can explore if you continue insulting, other countries or other trade relations that you actually have. It therefore is important that we actually keep the cordial relations with everyone else so that we can make sure that we optimize, our options as a country, and we can actually have a huge pool from which to fish as a country. We still are very attractive as South Africa. A lot of countries still see us as the destination, as the gateway to the African continent. We should actually leverage that. We still have a very strong industrial base that other African countries don't have. We still have a very sophisticated, economy. We still actually have, very good infrastructure in spite of all the problems that we have in as far as the network industries are concerned. And our focus right now, as business and government have actually collaborated on focusing on these three work streams, which are energy, trade and logistics, and crime and corruption. We should put all our time, energy and effort into making sure that we make those work, because in making those work, we make ourselves as a country more attractive, and we'll be in a better position to attract the 2 trillion rands investment that the president spoke about at the State of the Nation address in February 2023.
It sounds like you're saying handle everything delicately, but thank you so much for your time. That's all we have time for. Thank you. Do appreciate it, Busi. That is Busi Mavuso, Business Leadership South Africa CEO.